So, Maureen Comey. Yeah, so I'm just thinking, y'all. Hey, tea sippers, this is AunTeaFee about them facts. Weinstein, Epstein, Diddy, Maxwell, Trump, all of them lived in, was tried out of New York when Trump is president. But his cases and stuff of them 31, them 33, he's a convicted felon out of New York. All of them are convicted felons out of New York. So, I was thinking, they fired Comey. Why? When she was in office, when she was appointed, 2014? She was a federal prosecutor for 9 years. So that means that when Trump was in office before, she was a federal prosecutor. Why was she not a threat then? If he didn't like her daddy, if he did, it had no effect on Trump his first go round. So why was it an issue this time? And when did it become an issue? So I was listening to something over and over. I was taking a late hot bubble bath, soaking in with some Epsom salt and eucalyptus and all of that. Just listening. Let me see if I can cut it on. And it was just playing a list of names. And as I was listening to it provide this list of names, it became over and over, and I do mean over and over. I'm not gonna be on here long, y'all. I'm just thinking. And I said, well, let me go live, because if I try to wait until the morning, I'll forget my thought process. Where was I? Let me go here. So as I was listening, let me try to get back. Dang it, did I even save that? And it was going over the list of the phone logs. And I was listening to all the names, but it was ironic to me that who I didn't hear him mention. And I said, well, how is that possible? Oh, it's right here. Oh, look at God. Oh, man, please don't. Please don't. Please just go where it was. Oh, my goodness, it didn't. So it was going over the people's name on the phone log. And then I said, now why am I not hearing Trump's name? Hey, Cynthia. Oh, yeah, I did push it to me.
Ladies and gentlemen, here's a list of names from the Epstein flight logs.
Okay.
All right, these are the people that were on Epstein Island.
Okay, so as I was sitting in the bathtub just soaking and chilling and thinking over and over, and I was for about 30 minutes, I listened to this message repeat itself like for 30 minutes. And I was saying, okay, so why did I not hear Trump? Why did I not hear Diddy? Why did I not hear Weinstein? Why did I not hear names on this log that we know we should have heard, right? All right, so let me play it.
Confirmed by multiple sources. Bill Clinton, George Mitchell, Alex Baldwin, Ralph Fiennes, George Hamilton, Dustin Hoffman, Kevin Spacey, Liz Hurley, Laura Hutton, Janice Dixon, Naomi Campbell, Christy Turlington, Henry Kissinger, which may be one of the most evil men on the world.
He is, yeah.
Joan Rivers, Courtney Love, Mick Jagger, Courtney Guest, Phil Collins, Simon LeBon, Charlie Rose of PBS, Richard Branson, Candace Bushel, Tom Ford, Vera Wang, Nadia Byerlin, Co Stark, and here's some more. Seth Green, James Gunn, Dan Schneider, Steven Spielberg, Tom Hanks, Stephen Colbert, Kevin Spacey, Kathy Griffin, Oprah Winfrey, Sean Carter, Beyonce Knowles, Anthony Kiedis, John Legend, Christy Teigen Tyler, Ben Affleck, Stephen Collins, Will Ferrell, Eminem, Jeffrey Jones, Victor Salva, Mark Rector, Charlie Sheen, Tyler Grasham, Madonna, Catherine Hudson, Gwen Stefani, Stefani Germota, James Franco, Will Smith. Oh, has Will Smith been in the news lately? Justin Rowland, John Cusack, Anderson Cooper, Demi Moore, Brian Affleck, Meryl Streep, Wanda Sykes, Chelsea Handler, Michelle Wolf, Pharrell Williams, Quentin Tarantino, Robert Downey Jr. They are petrified of that list and what those films getting out. They have all the videos of all those people at war.
Really?
Yep. It's going to get ugly. They're panicked.
So are they going to release those videos? Or what do they do with them?
I'm told that, well, it's looking like they're holding it back, that one person has control of that. But I'm told other people have them and are going to release them at the right time.
So that's the big question. The level of involvement. You know, a lot of very wealthy and famous people travel in small circles. So you have to look how often these people came to the island. Was it functions? Was it parties at the island? You know, or was it specifically involved in these sex parties and stuff? And also, you know, how much did the people going there know? Now, I know that I'm playing it safe, you know, and I mean, it looks bad, of course. It looks really bad. You have to wonder, though, is everybody, because it's a city, you get a picture with Epstein. Does that mean you're involved?
No.
Ladies and gentlemen, here's a list of names from the Epstein flight logs.
All right, these are the people that were on Epstein Island. Confirmed by multiple sources. Bill Clinton, George Mitchell, Alex Baldwin, Ralph Fiennes, George Hamilton, Dustin Hoffman, Kevin Spacey, Liz Hurley, Laura Hunt, Janice Dixon, Naomi Campbell, Christy Turlington, Henry Kissinger, which may be one of the most evil men on the world.
Yes, yeah.
Joan Rivers, Courtney Love, Mick Jagger, Courtney Guest.
Oh, I'm sorry. I accidentally hit it. I'm sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen, here's a list of names from the Epstein flight logs.
All right, these are the people that were on Epstein Island. Confirmed by multiple sources. Bill Clinton, George Mitchell, Alex Baldwin, Ralph Fiennes, George Hamilton, Dustin Hoffman, Kevin Spacey, Liz Hurley, Laura Hunt, Janice Dixon, Naomi Campbell, Christy Turlington, Henry Kissinger, which may be one of the most evil men on the world.
Yes, yeah.
Joan Rivers, Courtney Love, Mick Jagger, Courtney Guest, Phil Collins, Simon LeBon, Charlie Rose of PBS, Richard Branson, Candace Bushel, Tom Ford, Vera Wang, Nadia Byerlin, Co Stark, and here's some more. Seth Green, James Gunn, Dan Schneider, Steven Spielberg, Tom Hanks, Stephen Colbert, Kevin Spacey, Kathy Griffin, Oprah Winfrey, Sean Carter, Beyonce Knowles, Anthony Kiedis, John Legend, Christy Steven Tyler, Ben Affleck, Stephen Collins, Will Ferrell, Eminem,
Good morning. Hey,
Jeffrey
Dwayne.
Jones, Victor Salva, Mark Rector, Charlie Sheen, Tyler Grasham, Madonna,
Can you hit the
Catherine
like button
Hudson,
for me,
Gwen
Dwayne?
Stefani
Please.
Germota, James Franco,
So
Will
as I kept listening to that list, I said, okay, now I know this is the phone. I mean the did he say travel log? Hold on.
Smith. Oh, has Will Smith been in the news lately? Justin Rowland, John Cusack,
Thank
Anderson
you.
Cooper, Demi Moore, Brian Affleck, Meryl Streep, Wanda Sykes, Chelsea Handler, Michelle Wolf, Pharrell Williams, Quentin Tarantino, Robert Downey Jr. They are petrified of that list and what those films getting out.
Travel log. It's the
They
travel
have
log.
all the videos of all those people at war.
Really?
Yep. It's gonna get ugly. They're in panic mode.
So are they gonna release those videos? Or what do they do with them?
I'm told that, well,
So
it's
as I was
looking
listening to this,
like they're holding it back. That one person has control of that, but
now we know that DT should have been on the travel log. Now, I'm sure this is not all of it, but as I was listening to it, I was like, okay, so why are we not hearing Donald Trump name? We're not hearing we're not hearing Diddy. We're not hearing Weinstein. We're not even hearing Ghislaine Maxwell. So then I said to myself, if Comey was appointed in 2014 and she was on a part of the prosecution for Maxwell and Epstein, while Trump was in office, what would make him fire her now? Yeah, yeah, yeah. We seen the Epstein. Mm-hmm. And all of this is going on. So then I started thinking, y'all, about Diddy and supposedly, you know, if he'd been found guilty of the racketeering, he would look and see if he was being mishandled. And then I started thinking about the Miami. Now, y'all know I was saying Miami was coming. Miami was coming. That means it would have covered the celebrities, cause that's the King's night, right? And that's the Star Island, both houses that never came up before, right? And with that investigation, there's a possibility that Trump would have been brought up, and that, and with that, as well as Epstein and Maxwell. Pause. Pause right there, T Sippers. Hi, Miss K. I'm sorry. I'm not looking at the phone. I'm looking up because I'm thinking about it now. And I'm thinking about if there was plans to hit Puffy again. And we're doing so regarding Miami and all of that trafficking that would have also touched on minors. Who would they have had to run that past? If she worked for Trump, I'm sitting up, I'm tired and I'm sitting up and thinking at the same time. Because I was saying to myself, even with the judge and them, having to present cases, prior cases, because Comey was asking for 20 years for Diddy. 10 for Cassie, 10 for Jane Doe, Daphne. And I'm almost thinking, I'm almost thinking, y'all, I sound crazy, but I'm thinking that had to have been discussed with the judge. I mean, presented some shape, form, or fashion about even the juror not wanting to follow the rules. The George guy who admitted that they discussed and deliberated, and he wasn't even chosen. He was a alternate. The judge is considering the danger, his violence. I'm talking about Diddy right now. They all pretty much work for Trump with the Department of Justice right now. I know that they have to be passed through the Senate. I did my little research. But the Department of Justice is up under Trump, right? So the attorney general, the same attorney general that right now is reluctant on the Epstein file, that they thought that they was going to blow the roof off, right? So who would they have to run this? If they were planning on hitting Puffy and Lord in heaven knows who else, the possibility of Trump and Epstein and Weinstein will be all involved. The same people that she has tried before, and then Weinstein, she didn't cover him. But who would they have to go through? Would that process have to be approved through the same attorney general up under Trump? How would she have gotten that through? If she already is having issues with Trump because of Epstein. So would it be easier for them to just go ahead and fire her? Because who's going to pick up with Puffy the remaining of his sentencing since she's gone? Who's going to work that? And who is going to replace her now that she is gone with the potential Miami? With them firing her for no reason, could it have been that they knew that she was about to come with another racketeering RICO that would have been covering what went down in Miami? Because they never, I'm saying Miami, I mean Star Island. Because that raid and what was that evidence, none of that came up in Diddy's recent trial. On purpose. So now I'm wondering, was she fired to throw off was she fired to cover up what was coming? Because all of them would have been implemented in what was coming with Star Island. Every last one of them. Every last one of them. Including Trump. Including Epstein. Including one. That's why this picture right here, which is the thumbnail, I'm looking at how Diddy is caressing this man's hand. So that's why my backdrop is saying let's hook up. Don't they look cozy? He holding his hand, he gripping his hand. Both of them are sick. Right? Look up at Diddy holding his hand. Gripping it. Let's hook up. Hi, Mark. I'm sorry. I missed y'all. There. Okay, I'm sorry. Let me see. Dwayne. Y'all, please hit the like button. There are too many rich, powerful, and famous people. I'd be very surprised if the names ever get released. Uh, they're gonna be released. I just don't know how they're going to cover it up. Because that list of names can come out. I mean, everybody knows that Trump name is on it. I mean, there's just no way it's not. You got you got more pictures with Trump and Epstein than I've actually that I've seen with than him and Ghislaine. Ghislaine. I mean, they were pretty tight. But it's a whole lot of them now. And I'm gonna be honest, y'all. I don't know how anybody with any type of morals, any type of integrity, who will make excuses for Trump. That makes no sense to me. How he is intentionally playing in people, victims' face. But I know why, because it appears that he's a predator as well. Well, I was just listening to his, and it makes no sense. So I'm trying to process what would they do with that evidence? Will it disappear? When she was sending the message to her team that she was not given a reason why she was let go, you know, keep moving forward, don't be intimidated. How some that attorney general, either there's a mole, there is, well, it has to be a snitch in there. It has to be, because Diddy Diddy had a, I'm thinking, y'all, Diddy had a informant that worked for the feds. He had a plug, because whoever it is did not forewarn him that they were coming a day early. He he had to know, so they went a day ahead so that he wouldn't, to catch him off guard, and he wasn't prepared for it. Remember? So this is so crazy, because you don't know who to trust. If they really work for Trump and Trump is dirty, allegedly, or he is involved to some degree, he had them flag his name. So anytime his name come up, flag it. Y'all not hitting the like button. Y'all, this is crazy. This is crazy. This is crazy. This is crazy, because this may be the reason why Dan, what's his name? What's that guy name? That had FBI director, uh, Bongino, Bangino. This may be the reason why he ain't came back. He want his name flagged, so he want to be, 10 steps ahead, cause he doing some dirty shit. He know he's implemented. He's gonna want everybody to lie. But if another federal lawsuit is coming and he can be implemented, how can they move around him and not tell him? Because this is bigger than Diddy. But he's also involved. And what happened in his trial was rigged. Just like it was rigged in Weinstein case, 2 weeks before Diddy verdict, Weinstein verdict was rigged. Problems with the jury. In Miami was never brought up, and she was fired. Yeah, this is heavy. So I'm gonna say this. If Diddy get time served is rigged, it's most definitely rigged. Because she was definitely aiming for 20 years. 10 for Cassie. 10 for Jane Doe. And I'm almost sure they had to have been trying to talk with the judge because of what was happening in the jury room and what the plan was, because there's other cases pending and another federal case was coming. On top of, you have witness intimidation, and you have witnesses that fear for their life, and you all but had number 25 saying he was going to throw the case regardless, right? If he get time served and walk, it's definitely rigged. It's definitely rigged. It's definitely rigged. And if they never bring up Star Island, it's most definitely rigged. Because Florida had a raid, California had a raid, New York had a raid. All three of them was raided at the same time. Why was Florida not mentioned? Unless they was planning to hit Florida separately. Okay, so I had to go and find pictures of them together. I had to make sure that Weinstein and Diddy interact. And they did. I mean, they were close. You see that? You see that? You see the hands? They wasn't bumping hands. They wasn't high-fiving. There's a grip right there. And he's looking in Diddy's eyes. I said, Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. Hold on. Lord, this is crazy. It's shit in the world. Big business. That human trafficking is big business. It's big. It's big business. We heard that man saying $100,000. What is this? Explosive secrets.
Responding to the Wall Street Journal article, and so MAGA is now responding to the Wall Street Journal article, and first and foremost is JD Vance, who we hadn't heard from, who'd been completely quiet on this subject. And I'm going to show you two different posts. After Trump's grab him by the pussy, access Hollywood tape, JD Vance posts, fellow Christians, everyone is watching us. When we apologize for this man, Lord help us. And then we have his response to the current situation with his boss, Donald Trump. And he says, forgive me for my language, but this story is complete and utter bullshit. First of all, JD, you don't have to cuss. If you wanted to apologize for your language, you could have simply gone backspace, 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 and you didn't have to put it. But you added this because you're an online troll that wants to be seen as, oh, he's so great, he doesn't want to cuss. What an idiot. The Wall Street Journal should be ashamed for publishing it. Where is the letter? Would you be shocked to learn they never showed it to us before publishing? Does anyone honestly believe this sounds like Donald Trump? JD, yes. It sounds exactly like him. And if they never showed you the letter, then how did Donald Trump in his response respond chapter and verse to the letter? Because we see Trump's response. The Wall Street Journal and Rupert Murdoch personally were warned directly by President Donald J. Trump that the supposed letter they printed by President Trump to Epstein was a fake. The first sign and sure sign of a narcissist is they refer to themselves in the third person. You ask any psychologist and they will tell you narcissists refer to themselves in the third person, and Donald Trump spectacularly does it all the time. And he has obviously seen it because he says it's fake. And he goes on to say that, this is one of my favorites, that if they print it, they will be sued. Well, no shit. Mr. Murdoch stated that he would take care of it, but obviously he did not, and he or did not have the power to do so. Emma Tucker was told directly by Caroline Leavitt and by President Trump the letter was fake. Blah, blah, blah. They're false. They're malicious. The press has to learn to be truthful. Fake news. Yuck, yuck, yuck. But here you see J.D. Vance is lying. He saw the letter because Trump saw the letter, and he just lies because that's what these people do. One person we heard from immediately after his breakup with his boyfriend, Donald Trump, was Elon Musk. And remember, he dropped that Trump is in the Epstein files. Then he backtracked. Well, now he's backtracking no more. He's got his contract for Grok at the Department of Defense, and he posts this in response to Donald Trump's posting. The old, admit nothing, deny everything, make counterclaims, but it won't work this time. And if you see that, that is Donald Trump's pattern. He does it all the time. Fake news, I'm denying it, it's not true. It won't work this time. I kind of think it will, because I think these MAGA people are so invested in this man who is absolutely deplorable that it would be so hard to then admit to themselves, we have been behind this guy and we should have learned from the grab him by the pussy tape that he was a bad guy, but they didn't. So we'll see what goes after that. And then Pam Bondi, who's at the center of all this, doing Trump's bidding, posts this. So Trump posts, based on the ridiculous amount of publicity given to Jeffrey Epstein. I have asked Pam Bondi to produce any and all pertinent grand jury testimony subject to court approval. This scam perpetuated by Democrats should end right now. Pam Bondi responds, President Trump, we are ready to move the court tomorrow to unseal the grand jury transcripts. Okay, leave that up for a minute, Seth. Here's what's particularly of interest to me, pertinent grand jury testimony. Here's what you need to know about grand jury testimony. Grand jury testimony is pointed. It is the prosecutor trying to make their case directly against an accused. It would be highly, highly unlikely that grand jury testimony would reference Trump because Trump was not the target of the investigation. He was a co-conspirator, collateral person, but the grand jury testimony is not going to say anything about Trump. But I think it's interesting that he's under so much heat that he's saying release it. But to be fair, the MAGA morons, the triple Trumpers, the cultists, well, he wasn't in the grand jury testimony. Well, of course he wasn't. That's not what grand jury testimony is designed to do. Let's see the birthday book. Let's see the client list, the flight logs, the messages. Let's have eyewitnesses talk about Trump and Epstein's relationship because they are coming out of the woodwork to do so. Then we have Laura Loomer. Poor Laura Loomer. She loves her some Donald Trump. She does not want to believe it. And so now she's going through the cycle of grief. And now she's in denial. And so here I'm putting up a post where Laura Loomer says, I'm calling bullshit on this Trump birthday letter to Epstein. It's totally fake. Everyone who actually knows what she puts in all caps, President Trump, knows he doesn't
What's so crazy about this that I don't think a lot of people are focused on is that there are many survivors that have come out now in the last 5 years saying that they weren't just sexually abused.
I woke up in a laboratory there one night, but there were scientists there. And I woke up one night in a laboratory, paralyzed and naked on a table. They did something to me, and they don't want anyone knowing about it. When I came back from there, I was hospitalized 10 times with panic attacks. And I'd been a very, very healthy, happy girl before I was taken.
That is extremely dark. Holy shit.
It's dark. And there are articles after articles, whether it's Vanity Fair, The Guardian, talking about how Peter Thiel wants to inject young blood into his system. He was spending $40,000 a quarter on a regular basis to get transfusions from an 18-year-old.
We need more scrutiny.
What?
This dude who is into some
What?
stuff also seemingly has a lot of money and control over people that make
What?
policy, but also people on the private sector side, and nobody's really talking about it.
Injecting other people.
Nobody is talking about this. Peter Thiel, it's obvious to me that he fits in on that academic side of the Jeffrey Epstein operation. He worked with all of these people and he held academic symposiums at Little St. James, at the island. But what's so crazy about this that I don't think a lot of people are focused on is that there are many survivors that have come out now in the last 5 years saying that they weren't just sexually abused.
I woke up in a laboratory there one night, but there were scientists there. And I woke up one night in a laboratory, paralyzed and naked on a table. They did something to me, and they don't want anyone knowing about it. When I came back from there, I was hospitalized 10 times with panic attacks. And I'd been a very, very healthy, happy girl before I was taken.
That is extremely dark. Holy shit.
It's dark. And there are articles after articles, whether it's Vanity Fair, The Guardian, talking about how Peter Thiel wants to inject young blood into his system. He was spending $40,000 a quarter on a regular basis to get transfusions from an 18-year-old.
We need more scrutiny over this dude who is into some weird stuff, also seemingly has a lot of money and control over people that make policy, but also people on the private sector side, and nobody's really talking about it.
This is some of the.
Respond to President Biden being diagnosed with cancer.
I'm surprised that it wasn't, the public wasn't notified a long time ago, because to get to stage 9, that's a long time.
I know he didn't say that. I know he didn't say stage 9. Yeah, I'm finna go to sleep. I just had to get that off. Uh, while I was thinking about it, I was sitting there taking, what is this? Pay attention.
Wine you've probably been seeing everywhere. It's for good reason. This wine is zero.
For the administration to release all of the files regarding Jeffrey Epstein's investigation and prosecution.
I'm just getting old and forgetting things, but I could have sworn that we had people campaigning, and if I get elected, we're going to release the files, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
Release the damn files. Get over it.
It's the administration and their handling of this, which is why everyone's talking about it. It didn't have to be handled this way. It's been abysmal.
I am trying to get you to take the political gun out of your mouth. You already blown both your feet off. And now you got it shoved in your mouth. I'm like, would you please take that out of your mouth? You're like, shut up. Don't talk about it. You have put the gun in your mouth and ours collectively. Stop it. Stop it.
Oh my God, Alex Jones makes my ears bleed, even when
nobody
he's
is talking
railing
about
against
You know,
Trump.
nobody is talking
Hi,
about
my name
this.
is Suri Crow, and you're watching the Midas Touch Network. Okay, Epstein. That has led the news coverage and every headline this week. Honestly, I don't know how much more proof the MAGA heads need, because the clues are very obvious at this point. Donald Trump has shown us exactly who he is for decades. A perverted, leering, and now old man with a fixation for very young ladies, children, including his own daughter. Please check out my recent report on the Katie Johnson story here on the Midas Touch Network, and I did a deeper dive on my Substack. But behind the Jeffrey Epstein files hysteria, the Trump regime and Republicans are literally gutting our government down to the studs and giving away the spoils to the richest, the wealthiest Americans.
Faced with a barrage of questions over the Epstein files, why can't Donald Trump figure out how to defuse this bomb?
Because Donald Trump doesn't want to. I mean, here's the thing. I just want to acknowledge for everybody who's watching this that we have literally been on like a week and a half distraction from what's really going on in America right now. Donald Trump is gutting the government. They literally just rescinded $9 billion in foreign aid. They're trying to shut down public broadcasting. They're taking Medicare from people, Medicaid from people. And here's where we are, is we're talking about this. We know that Donald Trump doesn't actually care
I'm just
about
not
the
seeing
victims,
that's
about
been
those
here.
poor girls who are human trafficked. I think right now we need to be focusing on
Facts. Republicans have tried for decades to defund public broadcasting, and for the first time ever, they were able to do it out of fealty for their orange deer leader, despite the fact that these cuts are going to have catastrophic consequences on their own constituents, especially in rural communities where local PBS stations are likely not to survive. Trump also ordered the incineration of 500 metric tons of emergency food that would have fed 1.5 million starving children for a week in Afghanistan and Pakistan. It was literally just sitting around waiting to go and feed these starving kids. In fact, NGOs offered to distribute the food, but nope. Instead of feeding starving children in need, Trump said, no, let's burn it for an additional taxpayer cost. And also, a Trump-appointed judge just overturned a Biden-era rule that removed medical debt from our credit reports. which is going to have devastating impact if you're a person like me who has faced any type of serious healthcare crisis. All of this on top of Republicans canceling healthcare for 18 million Americans starting in 2027.
We all know, actually, let me not, say, I think Donald Trump is guilty of a variety of things and hasn't been held accountable for them, period. What his base does and our distraction with that is literally that. What I'm interested in, be it Republican or be it Democrat, is why isn't anybody talking about the fact that if they were so riled up about this Epstein case and getting justice for these victims, why is Donald Trump defunding, literally just completely dismantled the Violence Against Women Act and completely defunded all support for people who have been trafficked, for human trafficking? There's so much that could actually happen that would be with regards to policy that would actually support and protect people that we could be talking about. And right now it just feels more like a political circus that I don't think is going anywhere.
The fact that anyone who actually cares about protecting victims and standing up for them and doing something about sex trafficking, the person who cared the most about doing that was the person they just fired. Maureen Comey, more than anyone else, was somebody who not only, talked the talk of wanting to protect victims, but spent the last decade doing the hard work to do that. Not just in the Epstein case, but as we just saw over the last 2 months in the Combs case. This is somebody who's dedicated.
This is the P. Diddy trial.
Correct. Yeah. So this is somebody who has just dedicated her career to standing up for victims, to doing the work that people are talking about. And the fact that they fired her while also saying we care about this is just wildly inconsistent.
And keep in mind that this president has spent most of his life trying to avoid accountability for the things that he's done against women.
They're exact.
As the lead prosecutor, we have Auntie Christina, who is actually in new legal documents adding attorneys to a lawsuit. So I believe the whereabouts of our spiritual journey. It really is. And I want to help Janice. We're going to get there. We've spoken. We know each other. I'm going to help Janice. We're gonna really bring it back up, bring a bit of a lift to whatever she's wearing. Anyways, hey guys, it's Murad Morali. Subscribe. Let's get into this video, guys. Christina, we have an update on the whereabouts of Auntie Christina. We don't have not whereabouts of just her actions, but Auntie Christina is definitely active. Do you understand? With Auntie Maureen out the door, fired as the lead prosecutor, we have Auntie Christina, who is actually in new legal documents adding attorneys to a lawsuit. So I believe she's doing this because she's not prepped properly and she's panicking. Because why are you adding more?
Okay, so he's talking about Lil Rod lawsuit. Hold on, let me take this off for a second. They crying now. They finna be crying. Okay, so as I was talking earlier about Miami, so he's talking about KK coming up because she is in Lil Rod's Coverup lawsuit. Diddy, Cuba Goodings, Charles Grange, Jane Doe. Who is Jane Doe 1 through 10? So I'm okay. Let's listen.
Lawyers in this particular lawsuit, which involves Justin Combs, Cuba
Justin
Gooding Jr.,
Oh.
Christina Coram, Sean Combs, and etc. in regards to Rodney Jones. Now, to my understanding, I thought this lawsuit was dropped, but clearly it's
John
still
and
active.
Jane
My question
Doe.
is, why is Christina adding more lawyers to this lawsuit? In this particular lawsuit, which involves Justin Combs, Cuba Gooding Jr., Christina Coram, Sean Combs, and etc. in regards to Rodney Jones. Now, to my understanding, I thought this lawsuit was dropped, but clearly it's not. It's still active. My question is, why is Christina adding more lawyers to this lawsuit many months after? This came out even prior to Diddy's trial even being settled. It's been months now, and I think this even came out before you gave your Rolling Stone statement. So why are you now adding more lawyers? Is it because more work needs to be done? Is it because Christina Coram is in danger? And this is what I believe. Auntie Christina, you are still in danger. You've still got lawsuits to your name. Rico's been acquitted for Diddy, which affects you. Great news for you. But you're still dealing with active civil lawsuits, and the lawyers that you have hired clearly are not doing their job properly, and therefore you are trying to add more people to the litigation to help you out because it's not being expedited. It's not being dropped. The results are coming faster to the point that you need. Auntie Christina, at least now we know about some kind of update to what this woman is doing because she wants to be hiding in the bushes. And babes, you can hide in the bushes all you want, but we can see your 40,000 teeth from here. It's given Halloween came early. Do you understand? Like, we've been seeing you. Please, Auntie. Like, come on now.
Oh, I
Come
saw
on,
her
please.
on the 4th of July.
I don't know why they're saying, guys, that Trump and Epstein were basically lovers. That's what the new gist is with new messages being released.
What?
According to the Wall Street Journal, these are the messages between Trump and Epstein. It isn't clear how the letter with Trump's signature was prepared. Inside the outline of the naked woman was a typewritten note styled as an imaginary conversation between Trump and Epstein, written in third person.
Yep.
Amber, you're incredibly creative. Here's this
I thought they were saying that Cohen guy was Trump's male lover.
Voiceover said,
allegedly.
more to life than having everything. The note began. Donald said, yes, there is, but I won't tell you what it is. Jeffrey says, no, will lie, since I also know what it is. Donald said,
Diddy's madam,
think of
listen.
it. Donald said, enigmas never age. Have you noticed that? Jeffrey says, as a matter of fact, it was clear to me that last time I saw you. Donald said, a pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday. May every day be another wonderful secret. So I believe whatever they're speaking about that is meant to be this thing that they both like are minors. That's just what I genuinely believe. Number one.
It's the,
Number two, them
it's
being lovers in some kind of
the,
twisted fantasy way is also something that I believe had happened.
it's
in a
their,
point where, they wanted to just do things with
child,
each other. They
the
wanted to be so
trafficking
experimental.
business.
Trump has spoken out. He's completely denied it. He is stating that this is fake and is threatening to also sue Wall Street Journal for publishing this information. So I do feel like Trump himself is facing a lot of backlash from his own people over the Epstein saga.
Yeah.
Because it's like,
Okay, yeah, we know that. We know that. Hold on. Yeah, I want to hear this.
Robert Maxwell, multi-billion-dollar empire like a weapon. As you can imagine, the most dangerous billionaires are often the ones whose money can't be explained through normal business channels. You see, Robert Maxwell, multi-billion-dollar empire like a weapon, commanding media outlets across continents while his fortune's true origins remained buried deeper than state secrets. At first, his life seemed destined for the classic rags to riches story, a penniless Jewish refugee who had emerged from the chaos of World War II as a decorated
Ghislaine dad.
before deftly transitioning in a self-made media baron. Indeed, it was a transformation so complete that even Scottish aristocrats accepted his chosen new surname as legitimate. But his publishing empire provided the perfect front for pension fund theft and intelligence operations, academic journals and newspapers masking criminal enterprises that would make organized crime bosses envious. The lavish parties at his 53-room mansion weren't just social gatherings. They were recruitment grounds where power brokers mingled with predators. His youngest daughter, Ghislaine, absorbed every lesson in manipulation and control, learning that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars, but in the secrets you could extract from powerful men. The Maxwell dynasty evolved into something beyond mere wealth accumulation. They became architects of networks, where human vulnerability served as the ultimate currency of exchange. In today's episode of Old Money Luxury, we explore...
Because y'all remember that girl said that the real villain was Ghislaine
ceased to coexist.
more than Epstein. Victoria.
$4.5 billion. In 2025 terms, this was the empire Robert Maxwell commanded at his zenith in the early 1990s. A fortune built on ink, paper, and the careful manipulation of truth. His media conglomerate stretched across continents. Pergamon Press, Macmillan Publishers, Mirror Group newspapers, substantial stakes in Berlitz, Nimbus Records, and MTV Europe. The physical manifestations of this wealth defied ordinary comprehension. Eddington Hill Hall rose from the Oxford landscape like a 53-room testament to ambition unbound. Maxwell had secured this Italianate mansion from Oxford City Council through an arrangement that would have made lesser men blush, renovations in exchange for occupancy. He called it the best council house in the country. Within its walls, Politicians and celebrities mingled at lavish gatherings, while his youngest daughter, Ghislaine, navigated a childhood that oscillated between extraordinary privilege and emotional austerity. The London apartment adjoining Mirror Group headquarters overflowed with expensive art and furnishings, each piece a trophy, each room a stage for power. In New York, a Central Park-facing apartment commanded views befitting a media emperor. The yacht bearing Ghislaine's name, Lady Ghislaine, embodied excess in marine form. Jacuzzi, sauna, gym, disco, all floating symbols of a family that recognized no limits. Private jets and Concorde flights compressed the globe to manageable proportions. Oxford United Football Club became another possession, with Ghislaine serving as director. Sport transformed into another currency of influence. Paintings valued at $20,000 in 1991 would be worth $47,000 today. A $50,000 table would command $117,400. Each acquisition marked territory in the landscape of the ultra-wealthy. Ghislaine herself would inherit this appetite for luxury. Her Manhattan townhouse, purchased for $4,950,000 in the 1990s, over $11,600,000 in today's currency, would later sell for $15 million. Her personal fortune, estimated between $10 and $20 million at its peak, funded properties in New Hampshire and London, a jet-setting existence among the global elite. She founded the Terramar Project for ocean conservation, moved through the highest echelons of society with practiced ease, maintaining the family tradition of collecting influence like others collected art. But beneath the surface of this gilded existence, foundations were already shifting. Opaque offshore accounts obscured true wealth. Money moved through channels designed to confuse rather than clarify. The empire that seemed so permanent, so inevitable, contained within it the seeds of its own spectacular destruction. $4.5 billion commanded respect, fear, and entry into any room on the planet. Yet all this magnificence, all these palaces and yachts and paintings had emerged from the rubble of war-torn Europe and the desperate calculations of a Czech Jewish refugee who had once possessed nothing but determination and a talent for reinvention. The name Maxwell belongs to Scottish lords, to ancient estates near Melrose in Roxburghshire, to a lineage stretching back to Unwin and his son Maccus in 1070. It means Maccus's Stream, a place of clear water and hereditary privilege. It has absolutely nothing to do with the story you're about to hear. For the man who would die as Robert Maxwell was born into a bloodline that knew only mud and fear. Ashkenazi Jews who had wandered through the Carpathian Mountains for centuries, leaving no castles, no coats of arms, only whispered prayers in Yiddish and the ability to disappear when the pogroms came. His people were shadows in the historical record, existing in the margins of empires that rose and fell around them like waves, their poverty so complete it erased even the names of his grandparents from memory. What survived was only this. They were farm laborers, breaking their backs on land that would never be theirs.
Knock, knock. Hi there. I'd love to show you what a K-12 powered school is really like. Step inside. Here, you can dive into subjects you love, move as fast or as slow as you need to, and let your learning soar. You'll connect with teachers and classmates, explore your interests, and learn great skills for the future. Hey, know what else is knocking? Opportunity. Discover yours. Now enrolling.
What survived was only this. They were farm laborers, breaking their backs on land that would never be theirs, in a corner of Czechoslovakia so remote that misery itself seemed to have forgotten its name. Into this inherited hopelessness came Meckel Hoch, a Jewish laborer whose greatest achievement would be fathering 9 children he could not feed, and his wife, Hannah Slomovitz, who bore these children like a curse, each birth another mouth in a world already starving. They named their eldest Jan Ludwig, though names meant little when you owned nothing, not even shoes for your children's feet. Born on June 10, 1923, in Slatinske Doli, Czechoslovakia, a place that would later become Solotvino, Ukraine, as if even geography wanted to forget this beginning. The boy, Jan, grew up Orthodox, speaking Yiddish, understanding early that his kind were barely tolerated guests in a hostile world.
These are the
where even
people
teachers
that turn
turned their backs,
into
while children who had learned their hatred
predators.
young spat upon him. 4 years old before his feet knew anything but bare earth. One of 9 mouths competing for scraps in a hovel that stank of cabbage and resignation. But it was poverty, not prejudice, that shaped him most. That particular variety of want that gnaws at your bones, that makes you understand power not as an abstract concept, but as the difference between eating and starving. Then came 1940, and suddenly their poverty seemed almost quaint compared to what followed. The Nazis brought lists, and on those lists appeared the names of Michael Hoch, Hannah Slomowitz, and 8 of their 9 children. What happened next was so common, it barely made the historical record. A Jewish family disappeared into the machinery of genocide. Perhaps they died in Auschwitz, perhaps in bullets in a Ukrainian forest. The Holocaust was efficient that way, turning human beings first into statistics, then into smoke. Only Jan escaped, running west with nothing, shedding his name like a contaminated coat as he fled through Hungary and France. Jan Ludwig Hoch died somewhere between Budapest and Britain, and what emerged was a creature of pure ambition, wearing the stolen name of Scottish nobility, Ian Robert Maxwell. Captain Maxwell, by 1945, decorated with the Military Cross, speaking perfect English with only the faintest trace of somewhere else. In 1947, this reinvented man would walk into the chaos of post-war Berlin, carrying British intelligence credentials, and discover something extraordinary. A defeated nation's entire intellectual property lay scattered in the rubble, waiting for someone with the audacity to claim it. Pergamon Press would eventually publish 418 academic journals by 1992, having launched approximately 700 titles during its existence. Numbers that tell only part of the story of how Robert Maxwell built his empire. The genius lay not in volume, but in the model itself. Scientists paid to publish their research, universities paid to read it, and Maxwell collected fees from both sides of the knowledge economy. His entry into this lucrative world began in 1947, when he started distributing German scientific periodicals from post-war Berlin. By 1948, he had established himself as a distributor, creating pipelines of knowledge from the ruins of the Third Reich to universities across the Allied world. The following year marked the true beginning when he acquired Pergamon Press. The company started with only 6 serials and 2 books, a portfolio most businessmen would have dismissed as worthless. But Maxwell saw what others could not, the coming explosion of scientific research and the hunger for peer-reviewed knowledge that would accompany it. Pergamon became his laboratory for a new kind of publishing empire, built not on popular fiction, but on the arcane world of academic journals where scientists paid to publish and universities paid again to read. Brian Cox, who worked for Maxwell for decades, described the business model, publishing a large number of journals so that established titles could support new ones during their formative years. It was a pyramid scheme disguised as academic publishing. Each
Another
new journal
pyramid scheme.
feeding off the credibility of its predecessors while extracting payment from both authors and readers. By 1951, Maxwell had transformed from refugee to legitimate British publisher, founding Pergamon Press as a limited company. The transformation was remarkable. From 6 serials to dozens, then hundreds, each journal a small monopoly in its specialized field. Scientists needed to publish to advance their careers. Universities needed to subscribe to stay current. Maxwell sat in the middle, collecting fees from both sides. The money flowed like water through a perfectly designed aqueduct. Maxwell's genius lay not in creating knowledge, but in controlling its distribution, turning the free exchange of scientific ideas into a toll road where he collected payment at every gate. He understood that academics, desperate for publication, would pay almost any price to see their names in print. Universities, terrified of falling behind, would pay even more to access that information. By the end of the 50s, Pergamon had become a money printing machine disguised as an academic publisher. The model was so successful that competitors could only watch as Maxwell expanded, launching journal after journal, each one another revenue stream that would flow for decades. By the 80s, his empire had grown far beyond academic publishing. Maxwell Communication Corporation.
Yeah, they all locked their way
Newspapers
in.
purchased for £113 million.
Isn't it funny that all of them are immigrants?
For $2,600,000,000 plus Nimbus Records, Berlitz Schools, and MTV Europe. 400 companies organized
But
into
they
Byzantine
their birthright
clusters, each
citizenship.
piece of an empire so complex that even Maxwell himself may have lost track of where legitimate business ended and financial manipulation began. Yet for all his billions, for all his yachts and political connections, Robert Maxwell understood that empires required heirs, and among his 9 children, he had already chosen his successor, not in business, but in the darker arts of manipulation and control. The selection process had begun early, though none of the Maxwell children understood
Donald
they
Trump.
were competing in a contest whose rules only their father knew. Among the 9 offspring of Robert and Betty Maxwell, each child faced the same brutal calculus: prove your worth or face the volcanic fury of a man who saw weakness as a personal affront.
Just
Most
like Donald Trump
crumbled
daddy.
under the pressure, but Ghislaine, born on Christmas Day 1961 into a household already marked by tragedy, developed a different strategy. Her brother Michael's devastating car accident 3 days later left him in a coma for 7 years, creating a family dynamic where, according to Betty Maxwell's memoir, baby Ghislaine was hardly given a glance by her grieving parents. The youngest of 9 children learned early that affection in the Maxwell household was a commodity as scarce as love, something to be fought for, schemed for, earned through whatever means necessary. While her father raged at his other children, Ghislaine became what he needed, charming where others cowered, flattering where others fled, transforming herself
She sound
into
like
the one
a
child
female
who could
Donald
make
Trump.
Robert Maxwell smile. Betty Maxwell would later admit that Ghislaine became spoiled, the only one of my children I can truly say that about. The favoritism was not subtle. Where other Maxwell children received torrents of abuse, Ghislaine received yachts named in her honor, seats on the board of Oxford United Football Club, and most crucially, proximity to power. Throughout the 1980s, she served as her father's shadow, learning how he operated, who he knew, how he bent the world to his will. She absorbed lessons that would serve her well in darker days to come, how to move through elite circles with practiced ease, how to make powerful men feel important, how to recognize and exploit vulnerability. When Robert Maxwell's body was pulled from the Atlantic on November 5th, 1991, Ghislaine stood at the edge of an abyss. The empire was collapsing, the pension theft emerging into daylight, her brothers Kevin and Ian facing criminal charges. The golden child of a billionaire had become the daughter of a thief. Her name transformed overnight from asset to liability. Manhattan beckoned, a city where reinvention was not just possible but expected, where a British accent and the right connections could open doors that had slammed shut in London.
A daughter
She
of a
arrived in New
thief.
York with her father's ambition intact, but redirected, seeking not to build an empire, but to attach herself to someone who already had one.
She in jail.
Through a mutual friend in 1991, she met Jeffrey Epstein.
And the Prophet ﷺ said the best form of charity is giving water. Maybe you're the answer to someone's prayer. $25 gives a
She in
family
there for 20
clean
years.
water.
Jeffrey Epstein, a financier whose wealth seemed to materialize from thin air, whose connections reached into the highest echelons of American power. Epstein would later describe her in 2009 depositions as his main girlfriend and best friend. But those terms barely captured the complexity of their arrangement. From around 1992, she became the lady of the house at his various properties. Their social circle during the 1990s included figures from across the political spectrum: Donald Trump and Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew and business leaders, celebrities and academics, all drawn into an orbit that transcended traditional political boundaries. Maxwell and Epstein moved seamlessly between a 2000 party at Sandringham House hosted by the Queen, gatherings at Mar-a-Lago, and flights on what would later be known as the Lolita Express. But behind the glamorous facade, prosecutor Lara Pomerantz would later reveal in court, Ghislaine Maxwell had found a new kind of power, one built not on publishing or politics, but on something far more sinister. The training of their first victim, the prosecutor would tell the jury, started immediately. Between 1994 and 2004, Ghislaine Maxwell helped operate a trafficking network that would eventually lead to her conviction on 5 federal charges and a 20-year prison sentence. The operation's scope emerged through testimony from multiple victims, including Virginia Giuffre, recruited at 16 while working at Mar-a-Lago, and Sarah Ransom, who filed suit detailing abuse that began at 22. This recruitment at Donald Trump's resort became the template for a decade immediately.
Let me hear that again.
The selection process had begun early, though none of the Maxwell children understood they were competing in a contest whose rules only their father knew. Among the 9 offspring of Robert and Betty Maxwell, each child faced the same brutal calculus: prove your worth or face the volcanic fury of a man who saw weakness as a personal affront. Most crumbled under the pressure, but Ghislaine, born on Christmas Day 1961 into a household already marked by tragedy, developed a different strategy. Her brother Michael's devastating car accident 3 days later
I
left him
thought
in a
she was
coma for
older
7
than that.
years, creating a
61.
family dynamic where, according to Betty Maxwell's memoir, baby Ghislaine was hardly
How
given a glance
magnificent.
by her grieving parents. The youngest of 9 children learned early that attention in the Maxwell household was a commodity as scarce as love, something to be fought for, schemed for, earned through whatever means necessary. While her father raged at his other children, Ghislaine became what he needed, charming where others cowered, flattering where others fled, transforming herself into the one child who could make Robert Maxwell smile. Betty Maxwell would later admit that Ghislaine became spoiled, the only one of my children I can truly say that about. The favoritism was not subtle. Where other Maxwell children received torrents of abuse, Ghislaine received yachts named in her honor, seats on the board of Oxford United Football Club, and most crucially, proximity to power. Throughout the 1980s, she served as her father's shadow, learning how he operated, who he knew, how he bent the world to his will. She absorbed lessons that would serve her well in darker days to come, how to move through elite circles with practiced ease, how to make powerful men feel important, how to recognize and exploit vulnerability. When Robert Maxwell's body was pulled from the Atlantic on November 5th, 1991, Ghislaine stood at the edge of an abyss. The empire was collapsing, the pension theft emerging into daylight, her brothers Kevin and Ian facing criminal charges. The golden child of a billionaire had become the daughter of a thief, her name transformed overnight from asset to liability. Manhattan beckoned, a city where reinvention was not just possible but expected, where a British accent and the right connections could open doors that had slammed shut in London. She arrived in New York with her father's ambition intact, but redirected, seeking not to build an empire, but to attach herself to someone who already had one. Through a mutual friend in 1991, she met Jeffrey Epstein, a financier whose wealth seemed to materialize from thin air, whose connections reached into the highest echelons of American power. Epstein would later describe her in 2009 depositions as his main girlfriend and best friend. But those terms barely captured the complexity of their arrangement. From around 1992, she became the lady of the house at his various properties. Their social circle during the 1990s included figures from across the political spectrum. Donald Trump and Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew and business leaders, celebrities and academics, all drawn into an orbit that transcended traditional political boundaries. Maxwell and Epstein moved seamlessly between a 2,000 party at Sandringham House, hosted by the Queen, gatherings at Mar-a-Lago, and flights on what would later be known as the Lolita Express. But behind the glamorous facade, prosecutor Lara Pomerantz would later reveal in court, Ghislaine Maxwell had found a new kind of power, one built not on publishing or politics, but on something far more sinister. The training of their first victim, the prosecutor would tell the jury, started immediately. Between 1994 and 2004, Ghislaine Maxwell helped operate a trafficking network that would eventually lead to her conviction on 5 federal charges and a 20-year prison sentence. The operation's scope emerged through testimony from multiple victims, including Virginia Giuffre, recruited at 16 while working at Mar-a-Lago, and Sarah Ransom, who filed suit detailing abuse that began at 22. This recruitment at Donald Trump's resort became the template for a decade-long conspiracy that prosecutors charged involved trafficking girls as young as 14. Each victim was carefully selected. Young, vulnerable, often from broken homes or financial distress. Education assistance, career opportunities, connections. These were the lures Maxwell dangled before teenagers who had no idea they were being recruited into a trafficking network. Court testimony revealed Maxwell served multiple roles: recruiter, instructor, and participant in abuse. Victims testified she would introduce them to Epstein under false pretenses, then gradually normalize inappropriate contact, creating a pyramid-like recruitment structure where victims were encouraged to bring friends. The prosecution presented evidence of an address book containing victim contact information under headings like massage, Epstein's Little Black Book, a coded directory spanning multiple states and countries. Annie Farmer testified about encounters at 16. Kate described grooming in London at 17. Each revealed the same pattern: initial kindness, gradual boundary pushing, eventual abuse presented as normal. Maxwell managed the logistics with corporate efficiency, supervising staff, arranging travel, managing schedules, and crucially, providing respectability that made parents trust their daughters to her care. A British accent, Oxford education, a father's borrowed prestige, all deployed in service of predation. The photograph prosecutors showed captured the grotesque reality. Maxwell and Epstein at Queen Elizabeth's Balmoral residence in 1999, invited by Prince Andrew. This was how they operated, using proximity to royalty to intimidate victims. Who would believe a teenager against friends of princes and presidents? On July 2nd, 2020, FBI agents found Maxwell hiding at a New Hampshire mansion. In December 2021, a jury convicted her on 5 of 6 federal charges. On June 28, 2022, she received 20 years, a fraction of the collective centuries of pain inflicted. Yet, the story didn't end with conviction. On March 30th, 2025, Virginia Giuffre posted from a hospital bed after a suspicious severe car accident, revealing kidney failure. Even more mysteriously, less than a month later, on April 25th, she was found dead at her Australian farm. She was 41, mother to 3 children. Virginia Giuffre joins a grim and oddly consistently roster. Epstein, found hanging in Manhattan. Jean-Luc Brunel, dead in Paris prison. Now Giuffre at her farm. Each death adds dark question marks to the circumstances behind the passing of key nodes in the trafficking ring's power structure.
3.
And yet, Ghislaine Maxwell sits in Florida prison, serving year 3 of 20, the last living keeper of secrets powerful men prefer buried. What happens next is anyone's guess. With that said, we'd like to see you in the comments. Do you believe the official story behind the Maxwell-Epstein case? Or do you believe...
What y'all think?
On the ocean.
I think she dropping. She releasing documents.
Like something we would see on TV. An intimidating patriarch at the reins of a multi-billion-dollar media conglomerate who forces his corrupt but privileged children to compete
Oh, this
for
phone
his
is
love
hot.
and affection. If nothing else, the Maxwell mythos keep
I think she dropping gems to mess with Trump. Cause she just like him. But why does she look cross-eyed on this picture? Is she cross-eyed? Oh, she look evil, don't she?
So how does it all look? Is my hair good? It's all
Is it making her eyes cross out?
When you go to the sea, the seashore, you only see
Yeah. I mean, she is the female him. But did something happen to her eyes? Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord. What's up? I mean, I think it's time for us to get to know her. What's looking animated? Hey, David. Oh, don't say that. Julie, right out off center.
So how does it all look? Is my hair good? Do I? It's all
Oh, she look witchy, don't she?
so vast that when you go to the sea or the seashore, you only see that little piece of the seashore. You might see some plastic debris on there, but you don't see much past that. And it's very hard to connect to something that you don't feel a part of and something that you can't see. If the destructive activities were happening on land like they are happening on the ocean, I think that there would be a worldwide outcry.
The Epstein madam. He said, what the hell?
So, I'm a big fan of the show Succession. While I have yet to create an old Twitter account where I baby girlify grown men, I did spend roughly $16 on a book of all the scripts from season 1, which I understand is maybe a little insane, but since I'm mentioning it here, it's now a tax write-off. As I skimmed over the first couple
Yeah,
of
but I
pages,
thought
noticed
she
the
was
show's
older than
creator,
that.
Jesse Armstrong, naming 3 real-life media families who served as inspiration for the fictional Roy family. He mentioned the Murdochs, who control Fox News, Sky News, and the Wall Street Journal, and the Redstones, who own Nickelodeon, CBS, and Paramount. But the most
She looking at everything at the same time. Baby, that eye was doing something crazy.
Flamboyant, charming, some say ruthless, Maxwell remains one of Britain's most famous adopted sons.
A British newspaper baron who owned a multitude of publishing companies throughout his lavish, controversial, and mysterious lifetime. Robert also just so happens to be the father of convicted sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell. Armstrong even specifically cited Ghislaine's close relationship with her late father as further inspiration behind some of his own characters. For all intents and purposes, the Maxwell family is like something we would see on TV. An intimidating patriarch at the reins of a multi-billion-dollar media conglomerate who forces his corrupt but privileged children to compete for love and affection. If nothing else, the Maxwell mythos teaches us that fact can sometimes be more tantalizing.
So all of them corrupt. He just said his children are corrupt.
Not only do you find rampant financial fraud spanning numerous decades, you also get lavish, controversial, and mysterious lifetime. Robert also just so happens to be the father of convicted sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell. Armstrong even specifically cited Ghislaine's close relationship with her late father as further inspiration behind some of his own characters. For all intents and purposes, the Maxwell family is like something we would see on TV. An intimidating patriarch at the reins of a multi-billion-dollar media conglomerate who forces his corrupt but privileged children to compete for his love and affection. If nothing else, the Maxwell mythos teaches us that fact can sometimes be more tantalizing than fiction. Because when you really take a closer look into what the Maxwells are really known for, not only do you find rampant financial fraud spanning numerous decades, you also get shady ties to international governments, capped off with a mysterious death that still has a myriad of unanswered questions attached to it. And that's
sound like it.
Ghislaine's own history of crimes, earning her a 20-year sentence in federal prison thanks to her notorious relation to one of the biggest known predators of the 21st century.
The judge making note prior to the sentencing that this is not an issue of Ghislaine Maxwell being a proxy for Jeffrey Epstein, she said, but this is someone who was part of a scheme.
I think you can see why I gave Ghislaine her own video now. Join me as we explore the endless mystique.
Victoria said that she was more. She was worse than Epstein.
Where high-powered executives queue for higher-powered decisions, publisher Robert Maxwell is pleased he's done it his way without a whopping.
Mirror Group Newspapers has just said that significant assets of their pension fund have been lent or transferred to private companies controlled by Robert Maxwell, apparently without due authority.
You've got to ensure, right from the beginning, that you're dealing with people who have got the morals of barnyard roosters.
Because I don't foresee this video ever getting monetized, allow me to now issue a jarring transition into today's sponsor, CookUnity. CookUnity is a weekly subscription service that celebrates the creativity of your local culinary scene, partnering with award-winning chefs from across the U.S. to bring and use my code JAWBRY50 to get 50% off on your first.
involved in a violent car accident near Oxford that left him in a coma for the remaining 7 years of his life. An event so devastating, the Maxwells' lives were suddenly and completely upended. 18-year-old brother Michael would be involved in a violent car accident near Oxford that left him in a coma for the remaining 7 years of his life. An event so devastating, the Maxwells' lives were suddenly and completely upended. As Elizabeth later wrote in her memoir, the consequences of such a tragedy were incalculable for us all. Describing the ways in which every family member coped with the event, Elizabeth admitted here to neglecting their youngest daughter Ghislaine during some of the most formative years of her life, recalling that, quote, Ghislaine, who should have been the center of our love and attention, was hardly given a glance and became anorexic as a toddler. One day, age 3, she planted herself in front of me and said simply, "Mummy, I exist." From that day, we all made a great effort with her, fussing over her so much she became spoiled. The only one of my children I can truly say that about. Yet, it's true that all the Maxwell children were well acquainted with the finer things in life. They grew up in the mammoth Headington Hill Hall, a secluded Italiente mansion straight out of Saltburn, which I checked, and it's only about an hour-and-a-half drive from the real Saltburn house, a fun fact for any Barry heads out there. Built all the way back in 1824, the 51-room palace first belonged to the Morell family for over 100 years, before being snatched up by media tycoon Robert Maxwell in 1959, who restored the property from its dilapidated state to a thing of beauty. In addition to replacing its original Victorian-era stained glass window with a depiction of himself as Samson from the Bible, Tatler magazine also wrote that Robert eventually planted guards along the property's main entrance, peppered the fence with barbed wire, and installed security cameras to nearby trees, which earned it the new unofficial name Purgatory Press, a play on his publishing company
Purgatory.
What, as you think back, was the happiest time you've ever had so far in that house?
My children and my family being together. Every Christmas so far we've managed to be together. And seeing them happy and busy.
Historian Ben McIntyre described the Maxwell children's upbringing as a mixture of cruelty and luxury, which isn't speculation if you read anything from Ghislaine's siblings. Her brother Ian stated physical abuse was a regular disciplinary tool used against both the boys and the girls. It goes without saying that Robert's affection was hard to come by, with his strict expectations even extending to the dinner table, where he would berate his children verbally to the point of tears if they failed to engage properly with the topic of conversation he proposed. He was incredibly controlling in nearly every aspect of their lives, being extremely strict with the boys Ghislaine was allowed to date, for instance, as he reportedly had his own plans for his youngest daughter to one day marry JFK Jr. He considered Ghislaine his favorite child and made no secret of it, going so far as to name his super yacht the Lady Ghislaine. More on that little 180-foot monstrosity in a bit, but first, I want to take a moment to explore Robert's
sound just alike.
personal history. It's true that Robert Maxwell was a fixture in British society, but it wasn't always that way. Born in poverty to Jewish parents in 1923, Robert, or at that time Jan Ludwig Hawk, grew up in a 2-room wooden shack before being forced to flee his home country of Czechoslovakia as a teenager during Nazi occupation in 1939. He changed his name a total of 4 times, in part to hide his Jewish ancestry, before finally deciding on Robert.
Birthright citizenship.
Forces and participating in the Battle of Normandy.
He needs to be sending her ass back to her.
Though it wasn't until after the war that he learned his parents, grandfather,
Her native
had all lost their lives in the
land. Why she over here being a predator?
Revelation that would haunt him for the rest of his life, making an effort later on to rebuild the family he had lost to the Nazis, even setting out to have the exact same number of kids as his parents, 9. Teaching himself how to speak with a proper English accent through Churchill speeches, Maxwell's wartime resilience had successfully gained him the trust of his British superiors. And after being tasked with gathering intel on a suspected communist uprising in Paris, 1944, Maxwell was then reportedly relocated.
My brother was so abused, he became an alcoholic, then passed away. Yep. Because he didn't want to be in the same business.
Maxwell, I guess, got bored. He met a guy over there who ran a German publishing company. This guy was sitting on a huge cache of scientific journals that had yet to be published in the West. The problem was this guy was a German national, and the time, German nationals were prohibited from making large overseas shipments for reasons that, well, I don't think I need to state. Maxwell then took it upon himself to secure the distribution rights and translate those journals to English before selling them to the West for a handsome profit. In an operation reportedly, allegedly, maybe, facilitated and bankrolled by British intelligence. The only time, as one former MI6 member told Preston, that the agency had ever bought a business for anyone. This placed Maxwell at the helm of a budding publishing company he named Pergamon Press, and went on to live a nice, honest life as an upstanding citizen giving back to the community, is what I would say if I were lying. Robert Maxwell was pretty much the exact opposite of that. He was a pretty bad guy. He's a bad guy, okay? Something also that I thought was interesting is that Pergamon Press apparently once had a dude named Brian Cox working for it, which is weird because that's the actor who plays Logan Roy on Succession. No relation, obviously, but just thought it was funny. There aren't many people who get to say they're a billionaire, media magnate, con man, and international spy all at once, but Robert Maxwell sure did. Maxwell's alleged
A spy.
of criminal behavior spans all the way back to at least 1955.
Didn't they say that, hold on, so we keep hearing spies? Didn't they say, Epstein was a spy? Okay. I see similarities in, Trump, his, dad, they upbringing, Epstein, and her. But what's blowing my mind is that these people are immigrants, and he has this issue with immigrants as if he's not one. Like, this is blowing my mind. And then she is a convicted predator, trafficker, and she's still here. Why is she not sent to El Salvador? Huh? I understand why they saying he protects her.
All the loans he had taken out, according to Preston. A fun little illegal strategy he would employ at different moments throughout the rest of his life, in fact. But being reported to the Insolvency Service wasn't about to get in the way of Maxwell's zeal for power. Running for prime minister in 1959, Maxwell was sure to prominently place his military rank of captain next to his name on the ballot, which is a little vain if you ask me. It didn't work, he lost the election, but this also wouldn't be the last time he would run for office, because shortly after Ghislaine's birth, and while the Maxwells were still dealing with the constant stress of their loved one being in a coma, Robert decided it was a great time to join Parliament. I can personally think of no easier way to immediately put your already English family under even more stress than pushing yourself further into the formidable world of politics. But he did, being elected Labour MP of Buckingham in 1964. The day before that election, Maxwell was also arrested for shaving while driving, which it doesn't sound
Was
that
missed
insane
intelligent
until you realize
agent.
he's going at 90 miles per hour. Not something you want to do with a razor blade pressed to your face, honestly. Luckily, the mogul learned his lesson, though, of being slammed with a hefty fine of 25 pounds. Great. Maxwell may have come from nothing, but he certainly wasn't representative of the average working-class Englishman by the time he served in Parliament, becoming known as the man who gets things done. If, by getting things done, you mean introducing powdered milk to the cafeteria in the House of Commons. By the end of his second term, Maxwell had encountered some new problems over in Pergamon, being dumped from the board of his own...
You don't tell me what to do over here on my platform, Carlos. You take your ass on somewhere. You mind your fucking business. How about that?
The man who ousted him from the company, Saul Steinberg, failed to realize that Maxwell
You don't know where you at.
subsidiary of Pergamon.
Take your ass
A
on.
ton of leverage he then used to bleed the parent company dry.
Y'all say bye to Carlos.
Shame, according to Preston. Back in the
Bye, Carlos.
spent the following years of his life expanding
Next time you mind your business.
beyond what anyone could have imagined. During the 80s, he
Yeah.
opened Oxford Football
And you
Club
stay in the
and
guest
acquired a slew
place.
of companies, including MEMPHIS Records, Macmillan Publishers,
Fuck
and
is wrong with
British
you?
TV. I mean, this dude was all over. One of his most lucrative companies, though, besides Pergamon, became a Mirror Group newspapers, which included the Daily Mirror, the second most popular magazine in the country behind The Sun, owned by Australian media tycoon Rupert Murdoch. Murdoch had already stiffed Maxwell out of at least 3 major business deals at this point, all of which Maxwell took extremely personal. His son even told Preston that at one time, it was as if the only 2 people in the world breathing the same air were my father and Rupert Murdoch. It was also during this time that Maxwell began to finally
The
embrace his
thing
Jewish
with
roots.
all
he
the
had long
tapes
tried
is
to
the
downplay.
power.
Though it is said,
Yeah, and she got a lot.
dealings during the
And it sounds like she's releasing piece by piece by piece.
Behind the Iron Curtain to persuade and facilitate
Cause she sees that Trump ass in trouble.
Israel with strategic air defenses that helped push them to victory.
She owns the key.
According to his sources, told journalist Mark Aarons,
A bunch of
and former
spies.
prosecutor and author John Loftus in their book The Secret War Against the Jews: How Western Espionage Betrayed the Jewish People. Maxwell didn't officially visit Israel until several decades later.
Espionage. See, here we go.
He was so moved, he began a business relationship with Israel's intelligence agency, Mossad.
Ain't they saying that about aren't they saying that he was an intelligence or a spy on Israel or something? I'm talking about Epstein.
Donation he made to the state of Israel, which made him the state's single biggest investor. He also worked out an agreement to, quote,
interesting.
Useful information that came his
and then we sent we bombed Iran for Israel without permission.
Maxwell of being a Mossad agent, but also blamed the billionaire for the imprisonment of Israeli nuclear technician Mordecai Vanunu, who, in September of 1986, threatened to blow the whistle on Israel's highly secretive campaign to obtain a nuclear arsenal. Unfortunately, Vanunu made the mistake of showing proof of these nuclear weapons.
And do y'all remember?
Maxwell, hoping the story would be published in the Daily News.
Y'all remember how they played it in Trump's face, and when he found out that they were attacking, he was like, Israel, you better not, do not. I mean, he went in like he was running things like, Israel, you better not drop any bombs. You better not. Like, what in the hell? The massive edges of the weapons of yeah, what's going on?
And blow the lid on the whole operation. Unfortunately, though, that didn't happen.
6 levels below ground, the Israelis have built a plutonium reprocessing plant, a nuclear bomb factory. To this day, Israel still refuses to acknowledge its existence.
As the Independent reported in 2004, Maxwell turned around and sent these photos to the Israeli embassy in London to, quote, supposedly confirm whether or not the story was true. It seems likely that Maxwell had motives other than journalistic integrity in this betrayal of Vanunu. As written by Preston, this resulted in Vanunu being, quote, snatched off a street in Rome by Mossad agents, injected with a paralyzing drug, smuggled on board a ship, and taken back to an Israeli prison, where he spent the next 12 years of his life in solitary confinement, subjected to what Vanunu called a cruel and barbaric punishment. So, thanks, Robert. Always looking out for the working man, huh? These allegations were brought to the attention of Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist Seymour Hersh, the man who exposed the My Lai massacre in 1970, went on to publish the Vanunu story in his 1991 book, The Samson Option. While Maxwell and the Mirror sued Hersh for libel, Hersh was eventually issued an apology from the paper and received substantial damages, which effectively ended the suit in 1994, according to the New York Times. The Mirror also did run a story about Vanunu shortly after he was imprisoned, but it was one where they cast complete doubt on his testimony and slandered his character up and down. He couldn't exactly defend himself because, well, he was in jail being tortured by the government, so Maxwell made a lot of enemies during his lifetime, though it was Rupert Murdoch who Maxwell became particularly obsessed with. Ironically, it was Maxwell's incessant urge to compete and exist in the same arena as Murdoch that, as Preston put it, led to his physical and mental disintegration, his downfall, and ultimately his death. In his attempts to earn Murdoch's respect, Maxwell ended up acquiring Macmillan for way more than what the company's own directors thought it was worth, borrowing from over 40 separate banks just so the transaction could be possible. Pulling a bit of an Elon there, I guess you could say. Adding to the long list of financial missteps Maxwell made throughout the course of his career. before long, his debts had reportedly exceeded $1 billion. The banks he had borrowed from wanted their money back, and as a result, Maxwell began siphoning cash from the pension funds of his Pergamon employees. Some 763 million pounds were reported to be missing from his many companies by 1991, which included over 400 million pounds that he stole from pensions alone. Maxwell, if you can't tell by now, was kinda in some deep shit.
Robert Maxwell inhabited a realm of lies. Many people knew this, but kept their counsel. Cowardice, or respect for the law of libel, to which Maxwell would resort with apparently infinite funds, to silence those who would scrutinize his secret.
In November of that year, just weeks before this revelation became public, Maxwell boarded the Lady Ghislaine for what was supposed to be a few days of rest and recreation on the high seas. Crew members recall his unusually cheerful demeanor, despite being faced with a mountain of legal issues back at home.
Yeah, another person just mysteriously died. Up, yeah.
His son, Kevin, recalled a tense phone call with his father on the evening of November 4th, in which an argument erupted between the two men over how a meeting with the Bank of England was to be handled the following day. The knives couldn't have been closer to the mogul's throat. By the morning of November 5th, when Kevin attempted to phone his father at 6 o'clock a.m., there was no answer. Then, at 10 a.m., a New York banker asked to be put through to Maxwell's stateroom. Again, no answer. At 11, a vice chairman of Macmillan called. For the third time that morning, there was no answer. At first, the crew assumed he was still asleep, until they realized Maxwell wasn't in his bedroom. In fact, he hadn't been spotted anywhere all morning. Not in the kitchen or the living area or any of the decks. It was here that the Lady Ghislaine's crew came to the slow and painful realization that Robert Maxwell was no longer on board the ship. A search party immediately sprung into action, scanning for any possible sign of the 68-year-old billionaire in surrounding waters. Unfortunately, the Lady Ghislaine had already docked at the island of Tenerife, Spain, 2 hours before Maxwell was even reported missing, according to this Guardian article from the day after it happened. It stated that Maxwell's body was soon found floating face up naked over 100 miles away from the Lady Ghislaine's scheduled route. When asked how the body could possibly get all the way over there, the island's civil governor answered, "That's a good question." After what I can only imagine was a strenuous experience trying to load Maxwell's corpse onto a Spanish helicopter, 3 pathologists tasked with carrying out an autopsy were all unable to fully agree on Maxwell's exact cause of death. This 2001 article from The Independent explains that the lack of water found in Maxwell's lungs led one British pathologist to rule out drowning, with a different Israeli doctor concluding the following day that no, actually, he did drown, and also he suffered a heart attack. The third doctor agreed with the drowning, but argued Maxwell did not have a heart attack. So which was it? Well, I'm sorry to say that to this day, nobody knows. What's weird is that Maxwell's body was still soft to the touch by the time his wife got to review it, noting it was weird that rigor mortis hadn't set in. After supposedly floating aimlessly through the ocean for upwards of 12 hours, Mirror reporter John Jackson, who also reviewed the body, remarked that Maxwell looked to be in perfect condition. No discoloration or wrinkles to be seen. Not even his hair dye was running. Preston also mentioned that a test of Maxwell's bone marrow found no trace of diatoms, microscopic algae commonly found in drowning victims, in neither his lungs nor the surrounding 3 liters of seawater that Maxwell's body had been found in. So, did he die before landing in the water? The official ruling is that he accidentally plunged over the side of his yacht either before or after suffering a heart attack. But that ruling hasn't been enough to convince everyone. Some, like former Mirror editor Roy Greenslade, are of the mind that Maxwell understood how dire and hopeless his situation was, and decided to deliberately end it all before he could face repercussions, while others, specifically those in the Maxwell family, have argued their father would never commit suicide. It just wasn't in his makeup or mentality. Elizabeth rejecting the suicide notion on multiple occasions, telling the Mirror, "I toyed with every possibility, that he had been pushed in by someone planted there. There were so many people who hated him. He had many threats. Many people would be delighted to bump him off." Later doubling down in her memoir, "I said at the time, and will never alter my view, that
Ooh,
Bob
Sutra, what I missed? I fell asleep. Hi, Mike. What you say, Imagine? What you say? Yeah, right. Oh, Lord, I missed what they said.
and everybody knew this. And he weighed about 22 stone, or 300 pounds at this time. The railings were wire, so I think he lost his balance because he was very top-heavy. He was Teflon, and I don't think he committed suicide. But as Preston pointed out, Maxwell's cabin door had been locked from the inside, with the main door leading out to the deck also being locked the night he fell overboard. The key was never recovered, which, if you ask me, points to something more than just an accident. And if you ask Ghislaine Maxwell, her father was murdered. Just like Ghislaine's future boyfriend, there are plenty of conflicting theories when it comes to her father's possible murder. The most prominent one implicating Mossad, who some say opted to assassinate their alleged one-time associate, fearful that his activities on their behalf were about to be exposed, as The Independent put it. Perhaps his swath of financial crimes had finally made him too much of a liability to keep around any longer. In their book, The Assassination of Robert Maxwell, authors Gordon Thomas and Martin Dillon present the theory that Maxwell had asked the state of Israel to cover his debts to the tune of hundreds of millions. Refusing to do so, they worried Maxwell would retaliate by going public about their relationship, and therefore took him out with a nerve agent before he got the chance to talk, at least according to Thomas and Dillon. But if they had in fact murdered Maxwell, this didn't stop them from putting together what was basically a state-sponsored funeral for him in Israel just a few days later, attended by high-ranking members of the Israeli intelligence community, as well as both the president and a prime minister of Israel, the latter of whom thanked Maxwell for being an enthusiastic friend of Israel, adding that I knew him, especially in recent times, as someone who took great interest in the Israeli economy, invested money in Israel, and offered to put his wide contacts in the international arena at Israel's service. He has done more for Israel than can today be said. Back at home, Pergamon was going up in flames. Both Ian and Kevin Maxwell were arrested for their alleged involvement in their father's financial schemes, though their acquittal didn't slow the company they inherited from suffering a massive collapse almost immediately after, with Robert's death also forcing his widow into a state of financial ruin. She lost everything she once owned and was supported by her children for the rest of her life. Robert Maxwell's public reputation was forever tarnished. For example, here's what the Mirror looked like in the immediate aftermath of his death versus the headline they ran just a couple weeks later. And in case you were wondering what happened to that infamous yacht, the Lady Ghislaine was eventually passed off to a Saudi Arabian lawyer before finally ending up in the hands of one Anna Murdoch, the former wife of Maxwell's longtime personal rival, Rupert Murdoch. Another weird connection I found pertaining to that yacht is that it was originally constructed for a businessman by the name of Imad Khashoggi, which I heard and thought, that name sounds kind of familiar. A 5-second Google search found that Imad is the nephew of a Saudi Arabian arms dealer. You may remember Adnan.
Y'all please hit the like
alleged
button.
client of the central character tying this whole enigmatic web together.
Put your right hand, please.
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Put your right hand, please.
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I did.
Miami Herald journalist Julie K. Brown wrote in her book Perversion of Justice of a time Elizabeth Maxwell made the desperate attempt to contact an unnamed friend of the family shortly after she lost it all. She described him as an American businessman Robert had met during his short stint in charge of the New York Daily News. She thanked this white knight for allowing her a place to stay after her husband's death, reflecting on the unfailing generosity he continued to show her in the coming years. Then, on November 24th, 1991, not even a month after Robert's death, the YIVO Institute for Jewish Research put together an event dedicated to the late tycoon's memory. Both Elizabeth and Ghislaine Maxwell sat in attendance that night. Pictured next to them at New York's Plaza Hotel was a man not yet known to the general public. His name was Jeffrey Epstein.
He covered his face with a mask and dark sunglasses, but this is Juan Alessi, who managed Jeffrey Epstein's Florida mansion for 12 years and who says that Ghislaine Maxwell was at the center of everything that happened there.
Did Miss Maxwell instruct you to pick up the young girls?
He had no comment last night, but Alessi had earlier told a Manhattan court that the sprawling home in Palm Beach was run by him, but Maxwell made clear that she was the boss. He testified From the day she took over, she mentioned to me that she would be the lady of the house.
In 2002, our old pal Stephen Hoffenberg was still in the middle of serving a jail sentence for his role in the tower's financial Ponzi scheme when he spoke to journalist Vicky Ward on the record. According to him, alleged arms dealer Douglas Leese had introduced Jeffrey Epstein to a whole swath of shady characters, which included the late Robert Maxwell. When pressed on the matter, Epstein downplayed his relationships to Leese and claimed to have never even met Maxwell, though Ward admits she did not pursue the notion that he had, even though Ghislaine was already a known associate of Epstein at the time she wrote the article. Hoffenberg also told Ward that Epstein was known to run in various intelligence circles, with several anonymous sources agreeing that Epstein was known to be a hyper-fixer, someone who could act as a go-between for international governments and cultures, similar to what Robert Maxwell was always thought to be doing. In fact, Ari Ben Menashe even claims to have been Maxwell's handler when he worked for Mossad, while Israel, on the other hand, denies any and all ties to him. At the end of the day, none of this has been officially confirmed, and the three-letter agencies who may know something have all repeatedly refused to cooperate with journalists, adding another layer of confusion to this already frustrating story. But this hasn't stopped any speculation, as Ward described the most popular theory to be that Maxwell had introduced Epstein to international governments, who then used him as a vehicle to collect intelligence, before he, as Hoffenberg asserts, took it a step further and started recording powerful people committing unspeakable acts. Hoffenberg even told The Sun that Epstein, his former business partner, would brag about this, explaining that, for instance, Prince Andrew had a weakness for the girls and fast life. Epstein provided that fantasy. Andrew would then give intelligence that Epstein would give to Israel. This was happening when I was working with Epstein. They created the plan of installing the honeypot cameras and had taken over the house in Manhattan to blackmail the politicians. He then took over the house in Florida and put in cameras. The cameras were to record. It wasn't just about gathering intelligence, but compromising the politicians. A highly bold assertion that, at this rate, may just remain unconfirmed forever. After her father's death stripped her of the lavish, elite status she had enjoyed her entire life, The Guardian reported that by 1992, Ghislaine was spending less time in Britain in exchange for a new life in America, with millionaire Jeffrey Epstein helping to manage his various properties in Manhattan and Palm Beach before becoming his top recruiter of young girls by at least 1994. For many years, the exact nature of their relationship was pretty unknown, other than Epstein once describing her as his best friend in Vicky Ward's 2003 Vanity Fair article, with Ward adding that she life. In 2021, an entire cache of new photos came to light, depicting the two as being a lot closer than just best friends. But to get a better understanding of what exactly Ghislaine was doing for her one-time boyfriend, I want to turn back to Virginia Giuffre's memoir, which mentions Ghislaine over 140 times throughout its nearly 140 pages. It also does contain some pretty graphic descriptions of abuse, so once again, if that's something you find uncomfortable or triggering to listen to, I completely understand. We discussed in part 1 how Ghislaine introduced herself to Virginia at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort before inviting the young girl over to Epstein's Manhattan residence to be abused again and again, sometimes with Ghislaine herself even participating, as a number of other victims have now testified as well. Virginia expanded on the first time she was instructed to massage Epstein while Ghislaine assisted her, writing, "I was prepped by Ghislaine to treat this as a lesson from her and follow her exact lead. If I did good tonight, then maybe I would become Jeffrey's traveling masseuse, seeing the world and getting paid well for it." The two began massaging Epstein together, with both Epstein and Ghislaine making flirtatious comments to the young girl until Epstein finally rolled over on his back and exposed himself. Virginia looked to Ghislaine for guidance, but to her shock, Ghislaine was now standing behind her, bare-breasted. She promptly began undressing Virginia, pausing for a moment so she and Epstein could have a laugh at what they called her little girl panties. Once the abuse was over, the three of them reconvened downstairs, where Ghislaine passed Epstein a black duffel bag containing Virginia's payment for the day, assuring her she had great potential in being a massage therapist. Virginia wrote that her mindset at the time was that in order to succeed, she needed to step up from being a teenager and start thinking like a young woman, telling herself, so what if I had to bargain my body to this rich old geezer? Some girls get themselves through college by becoming a stripper and using their bodies to pay for degrees. Others go down even worse paths. I guess it was just another way to fathom the road I was going down. The effectiveness of the lies I forced myself to believe was working as I continued to tell myself I had to make it any way I could, rather than ever letting myself sleep on the streets again. I was trading one shocking lifestyle for another, thinking I was choosing the right one. This echoes a testimony from another victim by the name of Sarah Ransom, who said Ghislaine helped her refine her massage skills to satisfy Jeffrey, explaining that, quote, if I didn't have sex with Jeffrey, I would be homeless and starving in New York, and my dream of getting a full-time education at one of the top fashion institutes in the world would be diminished, which I need to emphasize again was completely deliberate on the part of Epstein and Ghislaine. They went out of their way to find disenfranchised girls who they could basically force into a world of subjugation. Ghislaine continuing to locate and groom an unspecified number of girls for Epstein throughout the 90s and 2000s, working to normalize the abuse by having sexually charged conversations with the girls or just being a part of the abuse. Virginia once noting how she sure did act like she loved having control over me, telling me what to do throughout the entire Ghislaine's subsequent trial, which we will discuss more in depth later on, also featured a number of testimonies from Epstein's victims who blamed Ghislaine Maxwell for being a key component in facilitating the abuse they endured. An emotional testimony from a girl named Carolyn was particularly crucial in illustrating Ghislaine's role, recalling that at 14, she was unable to even pronounce Ghislaine's first name, just calling her Maxwell for simplicity's sake. According to Carolyn, it was Maxwell who greeted her at Epstein's front door and scheduled appointments for the child to meet with the financier over 100 times throughout the next 4 years, once touching her breasts and telling her she had, quote, a great body for Mr. Epstein. Ghislaine was so committed to abetting Epstein's perversions that she even confiscated the passport of a 15-year-old girl who refused to have sex with the man on Little St. James Island, as court documents reveal that, quote, one witness was in tears as he recounted Maxwell bringing a 15-year-old girl into the employer's home, who, in the utmost distress, told him that Maxwell stole the young girl's passport and tried to make her have sex with Epstein and then threatened her. This witness was later revealed to be Epstein's former butler, Ronaldo Rizzo, who also recalled the young girl was, quote, distraught and shaking, literally quivering, as she described what she had experienced at the hands of Epstein, Ghislaine, and Sarah Kellen, another one of Epstein's recruiters. The Sun reported in early 2021 that these same court documents, stemming from Virginia's 2015 suit against Ghislaine, also include allegations that the British socialite directed a room full of underage girls to, quote, kiss, dance, and touch one another in a sexual way, which of course is all in addition to what the Farmer sisters' allegations were that we discussed in part 1. Annie going into more detail regarding her experience when she took the stand in 2021. See, Annie was just 16 years old in the spring of 1996 when she was ushered out to the traffickers' 8,000-acre Zorro Ranch in New Mexico, some 50 miles away from Jemez Springs, where the Catholic Church was known to send pedophile priests for rehabilitation, interestingly enough. Annie read from the personal diary she kept at the time of the abuse during her testimony in court, where she recalled Ghislaine asking if she had ever had a professional massage before, to which she replied no. Ghislaine then led the teenager into a room with a massage table, forced her to get undressed, and began abusing her while Epstein watched, remembering how she, quote, so badly wanted the massage to be over and to get off the table. As KOAT News recently reported, Ghislaine mentioned New Mexico a total of 64 times in subpoenaed emails. New Mexico is also where Virginia accused Governor Bill Richardson and Prince Andrew of abusing her, and it's also another place that Alan Dershowitz and Bill Clinton were reported to have stayed numerous times, as Epstein told his scientist buddies on numerous occasions that this ranch would eventually be used as a base for women to be inseminated and give birth to his children. He expressed plans of having up to 20 women pregnant at a time, according to the New York Times. The ranch is said to have included a massive 8-person shower, as well as an underground strip club used to entertain guests, according to what an anonymous contractor who worked at the ranch until 2006 told the Daily Mail. The Mail also published a series of photos inside the sprawling residence that depict stacks of pillows lined up along a hallway, another shower overlooking a large indoor pool, and a massive depiction of Jesus crucified on a golden cross in one of the bedrooms. Which, I mean, can you imagine falling asleep with that thing staring at you? Like, what the fuck? Another architect who claimed to have worked for Epstein recalled a 6-foot-tall photo hanging above the stairs to the basement that depicted a naked Ghislaine Maxwell caressing a golden dagger. It's also also been reported the ranch was fitted with tiny pinhole cameras. They kept a watchful eye on all the guests, which made Ghislaine feel untouchable, as the contractor stated. This is also something Maria Farmer has talked about as well, as she recalled to the Mail that all of Epstein's residences had these mechanical rooms and tunnel systems. I know this because Epstein told me. These rooms were enormous, bigger than houses. I have no idea why anyone needs so many computers in one room. Frustratingly enough, the existence of these large mechanical rooms has still never been confirmed or denied. His Zorro Ranch was never officially raided by authorities somehow. All we can really do is listen to the victims. Victims like Sarah Ransom, who say, quote, Ghislaine was like the mama bear, if you know what I mean. She called the shots. We had to listen to Ghislaine, and Ghislaine was Jeffrey's right-hand woman, so, you know, whatever Jeffrey wanted went through Ghislaine and then filtered through, according to court documents. Insisting Ghislaine's role went far beyond procurement. After all, she wasn't just bringing him young girls, she was also connecting Epstein to some of the world's most elite power brokers.
Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison, and a lot of people want to know if she's going to turn in powerful people. And I know you've talked in the past about Prince Andrew, and you've criticized Bill Clinton's behavior. I'm wondering, do you feel that she's going to turn in powerful men? How do you see that working out?
I don't know. I haven't really been following it too much. I just wish her well, frankly. I wish her well.
During the late 80s, Ghislaine Maxwell started a business called Maxwell's Corporate Gifts, which involved her supplying long-term service awards for companies. I'm not even really sure what that means, but she was convinced her business could see quite a boost in capital if she reached out to U.S. real estate mogul and Jew salesman Donald Trump through her father, who had been known to hang out with the future president from time to time and thought highly of him. I mean, Robert Maxwell was basically the Donald Trump of the UK, so of course they knew each other. Excited to tell her father about this cool new proposal, Robert effectively shot her idea out of the sky immediately, shouting, "Have you got your bum in your head? Why the fuck would Donald Trump want to waste his time seeing you with your crappy gifts when he has a multi-million-dollar business to run?" As reported by Nicholas Davies in the book Death of a Tycoon. Only, I guess Robert underestimated Trump's affinity for stupid people and their stupid business ventures, because as Vanity Fair reported, Trump would go on to spend a lot of time with Ghislaine throughout much of the 90s. Like, a lot of time. There's a ton of pictures of these two. According to Stephen Hoffenberg, a character who will not stop popping up in this series, Ghislaine established a correspondence with Trump through his then wife, Ivana, who, according to what her assistant told the Washington Post, would meet Ghislaine at cocktail parties, gallery openings, and shows, that kind of thing. And that's pretty much all we know about their connection. We can't really ask her anything else since she's now buried at Trump's golf course, but I think we get the overall picture. Trump initially became associated with Epstein through Ghislaine, as was the case with many other powerful people Epstein knew. One investment banker who knew the couple attributed Epstein's connections to Ghislaine's own personal appeal, calling her a charming, likable front person, and explaining to the New York Times that a big part of the reason people talked to him was because of Ghislaine. Ghislaine is also who introduced Epstein to Prince Andrew, a man she's known since her uni days at Oxford. Even though she says she didn't, Andrew himself says she absolutely did. Given Robert's prestige, it's really no mystery that Maxwells have always had ties to the crown. In fact, some sources have even asserted the two dated at one time, as stated in a recent ITV documentary, Ghislaine, Prince Andrew, and the Pedophile, where one former royal protection officer recounted how Buckingham Palace staff assumed Ghislaine and Andrew had an intimate relationship, considering the vast amount of trips she was taking to the palace and the ease in which she was coming and going. Telling ITV she was in 4 times in one day, from the morning till the evening. She kept coming in and out, in and out. Business Insiders put together a timeline of their correspondence from 1999 to 2001, with flight logs and photographs laying out all the various meetings and excursions they had, which include the time Andrew invited Epstein and Ghislaine to his mom's Scottish residence. You know, his mom, the Queen. If Ghislaine ever did have a romantic thing with Andrew, it must have happened around the time she broke up with Epstein. What we know from that old biography provided by Epstein's lawyers is that he and Ghislaine ceased their relationship in 2000, but still remained close friends afterward, with Ghislaine relocating that year to her own Upper East Side townhome just 10 blocks away from Epstein's, according to the New York Times. Why they broke up, we don't know. They were still very much present in each other's lives for most of the 2000s, but after Epstein's guilty plea in 2008, the two were never photographed together again. That doesn't mean they stopped seeing each other, of course, as they were still exchanging emails as late as 2015, but it does indicate the two may have understood the scrutiny they were now under. Ghislaine, along with several other Epstein recruiters, such as Sarah Kellen, was immunized in Palm Beach as a part of Dershowitz and Acosta's sickeningly generous plea agreement. But Epstein was now getting a lot of attention as a registered sex offender, which meant Ghislaine likely wanted nothing to do with him publicly as to not bring any more unwanted attention to her own past, though she definitely wasn't about to disappear either. Though the law had officially caught up with Epstein, well, kind of. Ghislaine was permitted to live her life as if nothing happened. For a while, Ghislaine continued to do what she did best, schmoozing the elite class, sometimes even hosting events at her own house where she had stuff like this hanging on the wall. I mean, this is something that looks fake, right? This is what your QAnon uncle would post on Facebook or something, but no, it is real. It's a real Getty stock image taken at Ghislaine's house. You just can't make this stuff up. But regardless, this freedom to socialize as she pleased put her in the same vicinity as Naomi Campbell, Ariana Huffington, Tory Burch, Graydon Carter, Vicky Ward, Martha Stewart, Charlie Rose, Rupert Murdoch, Michael Caine, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Roger Waters, Michael Bloomberg, James Krakowski, Mick Jagger, and of course, presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who apparently didn't know Epstein, but still took his family on board the Lolita Express twice and went fossil hunting with Ghislaine or some shit. What the fuck?
You weren't ever on Jeffrey Epstein's jet, were you?
I was on Jeffrey Epstein's jet 2 times. I was on it in 1993. My wife had some kind of relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell. At another occasion, I flew again with my family, with I think 4 of my children, and Mary, my wife, to Rapid City, South Dakota.
Struggling with paperwork for a death certificate? Say no more. Vital Records Online has your back. Our user-friendly platform makes it a breeze to request your certificate. Quick confirmation, no hassle.
Mary, my wife, to Rapid City, South Dakota, to go fossil hunting.
Yeah, that's probably the last combination of words I would want to see appear under my face if I were on the news. For a couple of years there, Ghislaine was like a specter haunting these snobby rich people gatherings, actively harming the reputation of anyone unlucky enough to wander into frame while she was taking a picture. Because truthfully, not all of these celebrities were aware of what she was doing with Epstein. I mean, of course, some of them had an idea. But you gotta keep in mind, Ghislaine was around a lot of people. Like, as much as I hate Elon Musk, I have no real reason to believe this photo is anything other than the innocuous photobomb he's claimed it to be. Except Epstein did actually send an email in 2012 bragging about a dinner he had with Musk, of which I actually was not aware of until researching this video, so hey, not the best look in the world. Unless, of course, he was referring to Elon's brother Kimball Musk, who Epstein has allegedly set up with a girlfriend, according to Business Insider. So, again, not the best look, and maybe I should use somebody else to make this point, but the bottom line is that Ghislaine Maxwell had no trouble at all navigating some of the most prestigious social circles in the country. Even while involved in a number of civil suits filed by Epstein's accusers, Ghislaine seemed to have no problem visiting a private campfire retreat hosted by Jeff Bezos in 2018, just a couple months ahead of Julie K. Brown's bombshell series on Epstein. That's how slippery she was. Making TV appearances and giving actual TED Talks, Ghislaine was in full view of the public while knowing that at any time, the feds could very well come knocking. She was even involved in a few NGOs, including the time she founded Terramar, a weird, delusional project to create a country out of the ocean, kinda? I still don't really understand what this thing was. And frankly, I don't think anybody does. Even in the interviews I saw, you could tell she's struggling to explain the purpose of Terramar to this CNN host, who clearly doesn't know or care what in the hell this woman is talking about. I mean, it's just embarrassing. By 2015, Virginia had filed a defamation suit against Ghislaine, the socialite called her a liar over claims that Epstein and Maxwell had abused her, according to Business Insider. This brought Ghislaine all the negative attention she had tried to run away from by distancing herself from Epstein years earlier, and thus she began to panic. In 2016, she abruptly sold her townhome for $15 million and basically went off the grid. Believed to have fled the country, Ghislaine wasn't photographed at any other event past the year 2016 and started dodging various court summons as they rolled in. In 2017, her lawyers told a judge they didn't know where she was, but they assumed her to be somewhere in London. For the next couple of years, Ghislaine kept an extremely low profile, barely even going outside, according to one source close to her at the time, who told the Daily Mail that Ghislaine had, quote, become a real homebody, rarely ventured out. She's the antithesis of the woman who traveled extensively family and partied constantly with Epstein. That is until August 2019, when Ghislaine was photographed here at a Los Angeles In-N-Out, days after her ex-lover turned up dead at the Metropolitan Correctional Facility in New York. Though shortly after this photo made the rounds, she vanished again, which was, of course, to be expected. She had to have known this was coming. One former assistant U.S. attorney, David Weinstein, told Business Insider at the time that his death makes her the top of the food chain in terms of who you're going after. She now gets put in the kingpin position. Now, the hunt was on. The Daily Mail reported she was holed up in Massachusetts with her new husband, a millionaire tech CEO by the name of Scott Borgerson, I don't give a who she had discreetly married in 2016. Meanwhile, Sky News reported in October 2019 that she was hiding out with longtime Epstein associate Jean-Luc Brunel in Brazil. So there were a lot of conflicting reports, but it wasn't until the FBI used a stingray device to pin down her exact movements by tracking her phone signals. As the Daily Beast described it, the portable equipment, which can fit inside a briefcase, simulates a cell tower and forces mobile phones in the immediate vicinity to connect to it instead of the actual tower. Once it connects, the stingray captures the phone's exact location and the registered user's identity information. This brought federal agents to her New Hampshire home she had recently purchased under a fake name, where they discovered she hadn't exactly been living in squalor. The tucked-away hideout, literally named it Tucked Away, was a 150-acre, multi-million-dollar cabin exhibiting the same hideous taste and decor we've come to know and love. I mean, come on, what are those chairs? She was formally charged in Manhattan federal court with enticing a minor to travel to engage in criminal sexual activity, transporting a minor with the intent to engage in criminal sexual activity, conspiracy to commit both of those offenses, and perjury in connection with a sworn deposition. The indictment seemed to focus mostly on her crimes spanning from 1994 to 1997, and alleged she had exploited girls as young as 14, stating that, quote, Maxwell's presence during minor victims' interactions with Epstein, including interactions where the minor victim was undressed or that involved acts with Epstein, helped put the victims at ease because an adult woman was present. Because she posed an obvious flight risk, she was held without bail at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, New York. After all these years of running and hiding from authorities, it was becoming more and more apparent to both Ghislaine and the victims she abused that maybe a semblance of justice might actually be on the horizon at long last. Ghislaine's trial happened in late 2021, and honestly, it didn't take too long. In December, she was found guilty and convicted of conspiring with the late Jeffrey Epstein for at least a decade to recruit, groom, and abuse underage girls. During the course of her one-month trial, the jury heard testimony from 4 accusers, only one of whom used their full name, who all detailed their horrific experiences of being served up to Epstein and his girlfriend, as written in the New York Times. Annie Farmer said in the statement after the verdict that, quote, I am so relieved and grateful that the jury recognized the pattern of predatory behavior that Maxwell engaged in for years and found her guilty of these crimes. She has caused hurt to many more women than the few of us who had the chance to testify in the courtroom. Ghislaine's attempts to paint herself as a mere scapegoat for Epstein's crimes fell pretty flat. She wasn't really doing herself any favors when she started drawing the courtroom sketch artist right there in front of everyone, something that Charles Manson apparently did. It also didn't help that prosecutors revealed Epstein had apparently sent Ghislaine over $30 million to maintain her lavish life, and of course, these photos weren't a great look either, which I think I'll have to pixelate, but this one depicts Ghislaine pressing Epstein's foot into her breast on a Lolita Express, so that's wonderful. Defense attorney Paul Applebaum told Reuters that if he were in the jury, he'd think the two were Siamese twins. There was ultimately no way the defense could argue they weren't closely intertwined. An appeal from Ghislaine's defense was also recently denied, meaning Ghislaine will continue to carry out a 20-year prison sentence at FCL Tallahassee. Well, unless she gets Epsteined first.
Maxwell, for her part, stood to receive the sentence as is customary, but pretty much just looked forward and didn't seem to have any sort of overt emotion or reaction to today's proceedings. And I will note, during the course of the victim's testimony, she also did not appear to ever look at them, just kind of leaned forward and looked forward and took some notes as well.
To To this day, Ghislaine insists she did nothing wrong. Even her siblings have tried to convince us all of her innocence. But anyone who actually knows anything about this case will tell you that Ghislaine Maxwell played one of the most critical roles in allowing Epstein's international trafficking ring to expand as far as it did. The biggest injustice of all, though, is that right now, she is his only accomplice to receive any kind of legal punishment at all. And she was originally immunized in 2008. If this story has shown me anything, it's that the rich and powerful will do whatever it takes to protect their own kind. Which is, of course, something we all knew. But the way in which Jeffrey Epstein was consistently protected, combined with the lack of answers regarding things like where he got his money, who he may have been working for, and the extent to which he was operating, exemplifies more than anything else the most frustrating, corrupt, and ruthless elements of the various institutions we are supposed to trust. I think I could say that at this point I have truly lost my mind. I thought I knew the Epstein story a couple years ago, but lo and behold, there's still so much more we haven't even dug into. The full scope of Epstein's operation can never be adequately captured in 3 YouTube videos. Its depravity stretches beyond what our imaginations can comprehend, and I have a feeling that we may never know where this saga truly ends. The fact that this story still gets written off as just another QAnon conspiracy or something that isn't worth talking about infuriates me. There are real victims at the heart of this thing who deserve to see actual justice in their lifetime. And with the way things are going, we've only begun to scratch the surface. If you want to learn more, again, I highly recommend Julie K. Brown's series in the Miami Herald, Perversion of Justice, as well as her book by the same name, which I've referenced throughout all of these videos. Same with John Preston's book on the Maxwells, Fall. I think the Maxwell family has a particularly interesting history that shouldn't be discounted when talking about Epstein. Virginia Giuffre's memoir is also one of the absolute best sources you'll find when it comes to learning more about what these victims experienced at the hands of Ghislaine and Epstein. And of course, all of the recently unredacted court documents that came out earlier this year can be found down below as well. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. I think these videos truly did break my brain into pieces, but it's an important story and I'm glad you've taken an interest in it. I'll stop yapping now. This is taken up my life for the past 2 months, I guess. For my own sanity, I'm gonna go find something else to make a video on. Unless I end up dead first.